have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum, and it's Lesbian Visibility Week, so we welcome Ann Northrup.
I am Ann Northrup, and I was going to announce Lesbian Visibility Week, but, whatever. We'll get to the headlines. Instead, Florida and other red states, it will not surprise you to hear, are continuing to wage war on LGBTQ people, women, and Black people. And the president is weighing in, not as an attacker, I hasten to add.
Question. Can and will Disney fight back against the retaliation from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis?
Well, I think they have some legal grounds to do that. An anti-trans activist threatened a major dictionary company with violence and got himself arrested.
It's getting very serious out there. In Chile, a lesbian Catholic school teacher won a discrimination case that she started 15 years ago.
Never too late. Two European Union nations reject right-wing governments.
Russia shut down its premier LGBTQ group, and it fined social media companies for gay propaganda.
We have another LGBTQ streak winner on TV's Jeopardy.
She's very exciting. Janelle Monáe has...
Very young.
23.
Yep.
Janelle Monáe has made it official.
And another busy week of theater reviewing, including the Gay, A Strange Loop.
And we're gonna talk about all the upset on the country over the issues in Florida and elsewhere. And on television, on the regular news shows, they tend to refer to them as the culture wars. No, it's wars on us, on gay people, LGBTQ people,
and Black people,
and Black people, and women. Yes, exactly. So I just resent the way they refer to. These are just cultural issues. No, we're being affected by this.
It does sound very
minimizing,
and nonetheless, this is a huge battle between those who believe in a plural society and those who believe in a very narrow, white, straight Christian society, as was so eloquently pointed out by that state senator in Michigan last week.
Yes, Mallory something. Yeah, she's wonderful. So Florida, Governor DeSantis followed through on his retaliation versus the Disney company and ended their special status that they've enjoyed for like 50 years. This is going to raise taxes on Florida families in the Orlando area by $2,200 each, $1 billion extra liability for Orlando and Florida citizens. And, what happened to corporate free speech, which was so important for Hobby Lobby?
Well, that's where Disney has a chance to fight back, to say that this is really viewpoint discrimination, that they, as a corporation, do have a right to free speech and not to be retaliated against by the government. Because, of course, the Hobby Lobby case was about them being able to not fund contraception for their employees and being punished by the government for that. And the Supreme Court said the government could not do that, that Hobby Lobby had a right to religious freedom in that case. So Disney could go to court and claim that this was an unconstitutional infringement on their free speech. And my real question is, will the citizens of Florida, who are so in love with their governor and his authoritarian approach, change their minds at all when it starts hitting them directly in the pocketbook?
Well, and of course, the other thing that the legislature did to try to cover themselves was that they ended a special geographic status for about 4 or 5 other corporations. Now, President Biden.
Those citizens in those territories are not going to be happy either. They're also going to be hit with extra taxes.
President Biden weighed in on the Florida situation. He said, quote, "They're going after Mickey Mouse? As my friend used to say, who'da thunk it?" Press Secretary Jen Psaki got quite choked up when she started talking about Don't Say Gay and all those other things. She said it is a form of bullying. It is horrific. And it is, certainly.
Yeah, I'm also uncomfortable with this business of, they're attacking the mouse. Really? Is that the level at which we want to discuss this?
Well, don't say gay. Everything gets reduced to simple things.
Well, HRC, the Human Rights Campaign, is trying to fight back a little by erecting some billboards in Florida. Governor DeSantis welcomes you to Florida, and then they've covered up the Sunshine State with this little banner that says "Don't say gay or trans," the "Don't say gay or trans" state. Frankly, I think DeSantis and Florida are so much bigger than their little banner that I don't find this an effective tool.
Okay, you got that, HRC? I know you watch the show every week for tips on how to do activism.
I do much bigger, more provocative sloganeering. We learned in ACT UP not to be subtle about this stuff.
Let's come up with some. Governor DeSantis has a slogan. He now refers to the Democratic machine and their corporate lapdogs. I mean, this is so rich, of course, since the Republican Party is owned by corporations. And
what got him really so angry was not Disney speaking up against the bill. It was that they stopped funding him and other politicians, that they withdrew their campaign contributions. That's the real issue for him here.
And let's show how some of the right wing went to Disneyland. There they are, holding up a Governor DeSantis sign and renaming Walt Disney World Pedo World. This has become a huge thing. I think I will skip ahead in terms of pictures just to this guy, Christopher Rufo, who was the man behind the attacks on. Now, there he is. Oh, you cut the picture off a little. He's pointing to his genitals there with his hands.
Oh, please.
Please. He is the man behind the attack. He originally was the guy behind attacks on critical race theory and now LGBTQ issues in schools. And he sort of started the whole attacks on Disney as well, and developed hashtags about it, and has gone he goes after the company when he digs out some diversity document that they used in a training or something that somebody said at a meeting about incorporating a gay character. And this is his whole thing. And he's very successful. He goes on Fox all the time. He's got a line to them. He was present for the signing of the Woke Act by Governor DeSantis. And he says—
The Stop Woke Act.
What?
The Stop Woke Act.
Stop Woke Act, yes.
Yeah.
So he says discussion of systemic racism is now illegal in Florida. He says sexuality issues are more explosive than race issues, so we are his prime targets. He intends to maximize voter anxiety about gender issues, highlighting classroom practices that he deems offensive. And it's very, very scary.
He's making a lot of money off of this, too. Millions of dollars in donations and other sources of income. And I found that interview he did recently very revelatory. He's certainly not coy about any of this. And his exact quote was, "The reservoir of sentiment on the sexuality issue is deeper and more explosive than the sentiment on the race issue." And I think he's exactly right about that. And this is the tail end of all the centuries of of alternate sexuality being described as sinful and disgusting.
Well, of course, the way they used to make the race issue especially explosive was by linking it to sexuality.
Yes, of course.
Predatory black men who were coming after your women. I mean,
Yes.
the Emmett Till case, for God's sakes, et cetera.
And that is a pathway into going directly at sexuality at the moment. And a lot of the United States has gotten beyond this and is no longer so horrified and disgusted by homosexuality or any of these other related topics. But there is still a strong strain of fundamental religious objection and revulsion. And he is playing that up and energizing that and mobilizing that.
And in terms of DeSantis's attack on corporations, the solidarity that we enjoyed for corporations for 5 minutes around the North Carolina bathroom bills and a few others, it's not there anymore. Where people say we're going to boycott the state, we're going to leave the state, we're not going to work in that state. People talk about Disney leaving the Orlando area. Well, it seems highly unlikely. Where would they go?
Exactly. But to be explicit about the Stop Woke Act that DeSantis signed last week, it specifically says that you can sue if lessons in schools provoke guilt. Wait, let me not lose my place here. Anguish or psychological distress.
Why, they better shut down Chaminade High School where I went, where they, filled us with Catholic guilt.
It's a daily experience. He also slipped in a bill to attack tenured college professors. And now you have to be recertified for tenure every 5 years.
Oh, that's like Rick Scott probably gave him that idea, who wants to sunset every law on the federal books, including Social Security and Medicare, after 5 years.
Yes.
Get
ready, folks. This is all coming to you with the overturning in the midterm elections.
Well, no price is too high to pay to keep the gays and the blacks and the women in check. The right wing, they've adopted, again, somewhat successfully, a lot of the tactics of progressive groups, marches, lawsuits, citing the same passages of the Constitution that we always have,
yes.
but to judges who are more right wing. The question is whether we can turn all this against them. We talk about the Stop Woke Act. Will gay students sue for being made to feel uncomfortable and diminished by all this? I hope so. And I hope that's part of the legal strategy.
And I think we could win some of those cases. But the overall question is, can we win these political races? We have learned that winning court cases is not enough, that all those court cases can be overturned. We are heading for not only the overturning of Roe, but I really think Obergefell is right behind it. You may not agree with that.
Roe has already been overturned, when the Supreme Court refused to enforce an injunction against these laws which violate Roe. When they refuse to do that, they have discounted Roe already.
Yes, that's true. So this is playing out in millions of ways across the country. And to stay in Florida for a moment, in Walton County, Florida, on the Panhandle, the local government there has removed 58 titles from school libraries identified by Moms for Liberty. Now, there are
run by the woman who he wanted to be the education commissioner, but she had so many ridiculous COVID posts that they had to withdraw it. And that's saying a lot in Florida.
We've been telling you for years about the legal group Alliance Defending Freedom that has brought all these horrible court cases. Well, now watch out for Moms for Liberty, because they are the next relentless, shameless group going in. They have seen the opening and they are taking it. So
there's the Florida guy who is literally trying to get the Bible taken out of schools for all its horrors, and there are many. We've talked about it before, but it is literally true. There are tremendously horrible things in there that are very
double standards are ruling the day, Andy. I don't think anyone is going to sit still for that. But we have a picture of poor little kids in Walton County being read this book, The Purim Superhero. And Moms for Liberty thinks because there are gay dads in that book, and probably because it is Jewish, that it is not appropriate for the school library in Walton County. 58 titles removed from the library.
And it is getting violent. In California, a man was arrested for threatening to shoot and bomb the offices of Merriam-Webster, the dictionary company, outraged at their new definitions of gender identity. This guy, Jeremy Hansen, threatened to kill every employee of the Massachusetts company. There's no such thing as gender identity, he thundered. The imbecile who wrote this entry should be hunted down and shot. So the company had written in its definition that female is having a gender identity that is the opposite of male. This upset him very much. The FBI traced him down. The company had to close its offices in 2 places for 5 days because of this. Hansen's mother says he's autistic and fixated on trans issues. And they also found out that he threatened the ACLU, Hasbro, Land O'Lakes, and a New York rabbi, among others.
And then there's the passenger on Delta Airlines who was sitting in first class and was drunk when he got on the plane and refused to put on his seatbelt and refused to put his seat in an upright position. And when he was asked to do so, he took off against the flight attendant, who he called a faggot and queer, and physically attacked him. And then announced when he was arrested at the end of the flight, well, I'm homophobic. I couldn't restrain myself.
Is he banned for life from flying?
I don't know the answer to that question yet. I certainly think he should be, or should be sent to re-education camp to deal with his deep illness of homophobia. Well, but here's someone who really fits the definition, the strict definition of homophobic, because he is scared of gay people.
Okay.
Well,
I think he just hates us. In Alabama, the parents of trans teenagers have filed suit in federal court to overturn the law, making it a crime for doctors to treat trans people under Florida with puberty blockers or hormones, up to 10 years in prison for doing this. HRC is one of the groups representing them.
A moment of good news. In Montana, a court there has issued an injunction against a new state law that forces trans people to prove that they've had surgery
Drop your pants.
Before they change their gender on their birth certificate. The old law said you could do it with an affidavit just declaring your lived gender, but the legislature in its wisdom decided to up the ante on that, but the court said, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, Montana wanted to, that's why I said drop your pants. Montana wanted to require a surgical procedure to make the change. The judge said it's unconstitutionally vague.
But in Louisiana, the Senate has again passed a no trans kids in sports bill. They tried to do it last year and it failed, but they are not giving up.
I want to go back to a Supreme Court case that was heard this week. And the justices sounded very sympathetic to a Seattle high school football coach who lost his job leading post-game prayers at midfield. The school tried to accommodate his request to do this for silent prayer, but he wanted more. He wanted a public platform, and he wanted the whole stadium to participate. So then Alito goes, well, what if he waved a Ukrainian flag? And then Justice Thomas said, what if he took a knee to protest racism? Like you care. Americans United for the Separation of Church and State, which was arguing our side, said the school district could limit political speech. But if the court clears the way for prayers, will they do the same for those waving rainbow flags? I don't think so.
Well, there's some argument about the facts in this case. He claims that he was doing this on his own and not soliciting others to join him. But of course, there are those who think that the mere act of him doing it put pressure on the team to be out there with him. My question is, if he was so willing to do it on his own, why did he have to do it at midfield? Why couldn't he just go off in a corner and say his prayer?
The Lord hears you wherever you are. You don't have to make a show of it.
Tell it to him. At any rate, the court seems somewhat sympathetic to him, but not entirely. So we'll see where that comes out. And speaking of sympathy, back in Florida, we're never going to get away from Florida this week anyway. Alexander Jerich, 20 years old, has pled guilty to being the idiot who got in his pickup truck and did little wheelies all over a rainbow crosswalk, leaving dark tire tracks everywhere. Pled guilty to criminal mischief. His father testified and said that he's a lonely loser, and Alexander cried when his father.
The final, he was told to write a 25. Did you say this? The 25-page essay. The judge.
I was getting to that.
The judge ordered him to write a 25-page essay on the Pulse massacre shootings, mostly against gay people. He's 20 years old. The final sentence for vandalism has not been decided. Now, if we could say
gay organizations there are upset that this was not prosecuted as a hate crime. And the state's attorney on the case was this guy, Dave Ehrenberg, that you see on MSNBC all the time, being very progressive. So they're a little angry at him.
Well, there is a hate crime being prosecuted in Florida. We told you about that mom, dad, and son who beat a gay man blind in his own home. There they are, the Makarenko crime family. Now we know why they did it. They did it because he was dating the 21-year-old son there on the left, Ole, and the Makarenko family is charged with attempted murder and hate crimes. Ola joined in the attack. This happened in July 2021, but it took the victim 6 months to get his memories back so the police could make the arrests. He will not get his eyesight back.
And in Jackson County, Florida, Steve Yinger, 37 years old, has been arrested for the murder of Jose Diaz Johnston. We told you about this case when Diaz Johnston's body was found in January. He was a major marriage activist in Florida. And he Diaz Johnston took this guy, Yinger, into his home after Yinger was released from prison. Diaz Johnston had done this a lot, helping out people who needed a place to stay or other help. But this guy murdered him. But he has now been arrested and charged with the murder.
Let's go back to the library in Enid, Oklahoma. The library pulled down an LGBTQ display. And now they barred all kinds of LGBTQ books and from being displayed. And the collateral damage in this witch hunt was a ban on a sexual assault survivors group, because that has to do with sex, and a group for older women that read romance novels. The barred books include Confronting LGBTQ plus Discrimination, LGBTQ Families, The Ultimate Teen Guide, as Oklahoma sinks into the dust.
But they have the Bob Dylan Museum in Tulsa. That's a good.
Wait till they read the lyrics.
That's right. It could disappear very quickly. But the point of all of this, and I made a note to myself to point this out. We have now gone through in 25 minutes a long list of incidents, just hitting a few states around the country. This is very widespread and growing, and this is all a result of this hateful pedophile rhetoric that is being spread by the right wing, and it is just provoking all this hatred and violence and
Yes.
fear. Exxon gas stations have been told not to fly rainbow flags. It is just, it's terrifying, outrageous, and it's happening everywhere.
Grooming is the big word, a watchword for the right wing. It's replaced socialist because it's more effective. George Takei spoke for many of us when he wrote that he was groomed to be heterosexual, and it didn't change a thing. Still as gay as a rainbow sprinkled cupcake, though I don't know if you're allowed to sell them at PTA bake sales in Florida.
Well, that's clever and cute, but it doesn't really address the rage and terror that the right-wing people fear who are doing this.
Well, they've always never wanted gay stuff talked about at all. I mean, look, we're entirely banned from media in China and in Russia because they think any mention of us is going to turn everybody gay.
Yes. And it's not funny, and it's not cute, and it's very, very dangerous. And all these stories we're talking about are stories about people who are going to be directly harmed, either physically abused or killed, or psychologically terrorized.
It's having a deep impact on the mental health, especially of young people and us. We're not immune to this. It is tough.
I don't know.
Wading through all this every week, huh?
I'm semi-immune, but we've been doing this for 50 years, so it's something we have.
I want to give them a little bit better news. In Kansas, supporters of the trans sports ban apparently do not have the 2/3 to override Democratic Governor Laura Kelly's veto. Put this picture up. It's from a couple of years ago because it includes, so that's Tom Witt there he's the executive director of Equality Kansas. He's saying that Republicans don't mind if kindergartners have their genitals inspected. He's very provocative in the way he puts out the line. In the past, he has spotlighted these hateful bills and stopped them in GOP committees from even holding hearings. He says this is life and death for some kids. He plans at 60 and having survived a heart attack and bypass surgery to retire, but he has mentored younger activists, and he's been aided by now that's Governor Laura Kelly in the middle, who vetoed the bill. On the right is someone who has passed away, trans activist Stephanie Mott, who died in 2019. And of course, out Representative Sharice David, now a member of Congress, has played a role in trying to stop these bills as well. So good stuff happening in Kansas, good people.
All right, I'm going back to another bad local story with a good twist. And that is in Grain Valley, Missouri, a fairly rural spot. Teachers there were told by the school board to remove safe space rainbow stickers. And the explanation from the board president was all spaces are safe spaces for everybody in our schools. We don't need this kind of signaling. So the students protested. And I think this is just a great, adorable picture of students outside the school with signs saying protect LGBTQ. LGBTQ needs, I can't read that sign.
Well, so the school board, put out a anti-discrimination statement that does not include sexual orientation and gender identity, only those that are covered by law. And I guess in this suburb of Kansas City, maybe it's not. And there certainly is no statewide law in Missouri, although I imagine there is, and I'm sure I'll be corrected in Kansas City that there is. I hope so.
Well, I am just always thrilled to see grassroots people, students, parents, people taking action and not waiting for some national organization to tell them to do it, but just getting out there and being wonderful warriors for safety and peace and justice.
And although we lost badly in Alabama on these bills, I want to pay tribute to out gay Senator Neil Rafferty. We have a picture of him, who very much worries for the kids. He's fighting a very lonely battle. The state just criminalized trans youth care, 66 to 28 and 26 to 5 in the Senate. He pleaded with colleagues. He begged them. And, you know, in the past, he's out gay and he'd been able to head off these bills. But this year, this is all the Republicans have. And by the way, he got tremendous unanimous support from his Black Democratic colleagues.
And he's also the one who said, if you vote for this, don't pretend you're my friend. We also want to give a big shout out to Jillian Orr in Provo, Utah, who was graduating from BYU, Brigham Young University. And at her graduation, Jillian is bisexual out. She had actually her sister, I think, sewed a rainbow flag inside her gown. And as she was being presented her diploma, she just flashed open the gown to show the rainbow flag.
She said she hopes BYU students realize the sooner they live their life authentically, the sooner they can tap into happiness. She's a bisexual psychology major. She's bisexual and she's a psychology major. She once got a quiz and it said, one who truly loves LGBTQ people will fill in the blank. And she wrote, love them unconditionally and accept whatever they want. And then that's best for them. And that was marked wrong on the test. One sister stitched the flag. Another sister came down from Montana to witness this. So she's getting family support.
And Jillian said, the faster you do the scary thing, the sooner you can be free.
Absolutely.
Wise words.
In Illinois, federal judge Nancy Rosenstengel ordered the U.S. Bureau of Prisons to move quickly to provide gender affirmation surgery for Christine Nicole Iglesias so that she can get her operation and recuperate before she's discharged in December. The ACLU says it's the first time that this has been ordered on the Federal Bureau of Prisons. They're holding a hearing April 28th to decide whether to hold the Justice Department and the Bureau of Prisons in contempt for dragging their rears on this. Iglesias, in the meantime, is confined to an all-male prison.
Well, let's go back to Utah for a minute and discuss whether we think it's a good idea for the Democrats to be endorsing Evan McMullin for U.S. Senate against Mike Lee, who is a right-wing monster.
Evan McMullin, who has a lesbian mom, but is against same-sex marriage, but, says it's settled law. Yes, the Democrats haven't elected a U.S. senator from Utah in over 50 years. So they're trying to be practical because it's so important to stop Mike Lee, who's a bit of a monster and one of the insurrectionists, has been revealed in released transcripts this week. So yes, I think it's a good idea, and you got to get practical about winning these races, folks. I mean, I would love socialist revolution, but it ain't happening.
Well. Exactly. My concern is who will he caucus with should he manage to win?
Well, he's been a never Trump Republican for a long time. I can't believe he would want to empower what has become a fascist party.
Well, I would say don't hold your breath on that.
I never hold my breath. It's very difficult. And I'm concerned about Elon Musk buying Twitter because it's certainly going to help Trump come back and empower a lot of haters out there.
And are we concerned about Madison Coffin cross-dressing in college or whatever?
He's the ultimate hypocrite. He usually wraps himself in the flag, American, Confederate, and MAGA, but I repeat myself. these pictures emerged of him in ladies' lingerie. Now, this is before he went to Congress and said that older Republican colleagues were inviting him to cocaine-fueled orgies. Now, Cawthorn said these were goofy vacation photos way before I ran for Congress. When you're 26 years old and there's nothing way before you ran for Congress. But anyway, he reaffirmed his personal relationship with Jesus Christ, who favored gender-neutral clothing, not sexy lingerie. He also said there's only one God and two genders. By the way, he had a hell of a week. He tried to bring a gun on a plane, and he was stopped, and I hope fined seriously. And he was implicated in a cryptocurrency scandal. Now, if you want to keep voting for this guy, I don't get it.
And even Kevin McCarthy went after him on those tapes that have been revealed.
You told them about our orgies?
That wasn't quite it. No. All right.
Speaking of drinking, a plaque was unveiled at Julius Bar, the oldest gay bar in New York, and a bar that goes back to the mid-19th century, to commemorate the 1966 sip-in that won gay people the right to be served alcohol. 4 gay men from the Mattachine Society, including Randy Wicker there in the middle. He's the old guy, who has been a gay activist since 1958.
Hero.
He's the only one surviving from those 4. Also there you see Andrew Berman from the Greenwich Village Society for Historic Preservation, Senator Brad Oelman, and Ken Lusbader from the New York City LGBTQ Historic Sites Project protest. The owner of the bar, is very enthusiastic about this woman named Helen Buford, and John Cameron Mitchell was there. Also, the Village Voice reporter who covered the original sip-in was there.
Yes, I was delighted to see her. And
They should have let her speak.
Well, John Cameron Mitchell runs or did run a weekly event at the bar, so
still does, yeah.
Connected to it, yeah. All right, moving on around the world.
Yes.
Well, big news from South Korea, where a court said that the military had inappropriately and illegally canned a couple of gay men in the military for having sex. He said the military sodomy law is unconstitutional, and that gay soldiers can have sex off base in their private lives.
Good. Good news from Mexico in the state of Baja California. They have banned conversion therapy by a 20-4 vote in their Congress. Violators face up to 6 years in prison for violating the law, and it does not seem to apply just to minors.
And before we get to bad news from Russia, let's go to Chile, where the Inter-American Court of Human Rights has ruled for a lesbian teacher in a Catholic school, Sandra Pavez, who was fired 15 years ago for being a lesbian. And the school, of course, argued that they had the right as a religious institution to discriminate. And the Inter-American Court of Human Rights said, no, you do not have a religious exemption to discriminate. Our rules are no discrimination, and you lose.
The Chile has been ordered to change their policies and pay her $65,000 plus court expenses. She retired in January, but it set a tremendous precedent. She would have lost in the United States.
And she lost in regular courts in Chile, and that's why she took it to the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, and they have overruled all the Chile courts.
Let's talk about some of the world politics this week. We dodged a fascist takeover in France with President Emmanuel Macron bested Marine Le Pen in a runoff Sunday, albeit by a closer 58 to 42% margin. And in Slovenia, the Trumpian Prime Minister, Janez Janša, was seeking a 4th term and lost to the Environmentalist Freedom Movement Party. Janša's nickname was Marshal Twito for his ultranationalism.
Well, a win is a win, and we're happy to have them, but there's still scary numbers of right wingers in all these countries, including France.
And ours.
And ours, absolutely. And Russia, a judge ruled that the LGBTQ plus organization, local organization Sphere, is contrary to Russian state policy,
I should hope so.
and ruled that they do not have a right to exist.
And they're going to try to keep functioning somehow. This is the group that aided LGBT Chechens getting out of there from evading murder by the government. And they also, a Moscow court also fined 2 million rubles for LGBT propaganda of the social media companies, Facebook, Instagram, and another
TikTok.
one. TikTok, right.
That's 54,000 US dollars. I think it's the government that was fining them.
No. I looked it up last night. I think it's changed. It's now $27,000. The ruble is sinking.
But it's the government that imposed the fines, not a court, right?
I thought it was a court, but okay.
We'll see.
Russia.
And in Saudi Arabia, the government there has rejected the new movie Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness because they have a lesbian character, America Chavez, a superhero played by Xochitl Gomez. That superhero movie will not be playing in Saudi Arabia.
In the United Kingdom, the Royal British Legion has apologized for past homophobia. For years, they denounced LGBTQ plus wreaths being laid at the cenotaph during veterans' ceremonies as disgusting and an insult to the war dead. So the new Director General apologized, says they formed a positive relationship with Fighting with Pride. Peter Tatchell has been pushing this for years.
Well, let's not forget that when the concentration camps in Germany were liberated at the end of World War II, the gay prisoners were taken off to prison.
Correct. Like, in other words, their sentences were justified. Also in the United Kingdom, Brian Paddick, an out gay member of the House of Lords, says the upper house is doing its best to stop Boris Johnson's plans to restrict the right to vote, the right to protest, and the right to claim asylum in the United Kingdom.
All right. And in Kenya, a non-binary lesbian, Sheila Adhiambo Lumumba, was 25 years old, raped and killed at home by a group of men. Now, this echoes what we had heard was going on in South Africa for years, where there was a lot of corrective rape, attempts to go after lesbians and change them forcibly by raping them. Why that would be the solution defies logic. But she was not only raped, but murdered.
Horrible. In Uruguay, Michelle Suarez, 34 years old, the country's first
39, I believe.
All right. Country's first trans senator was seated and has vowed to institute protections. She's been an activist for trans rights since 2009. She said it was a way to cope with her mother's death. She represents the Communist Party. She wants 1% of government jobs reserved for trans people. Can we do that with our funding here? I keep reading about funding.
Well, I think you're a little. I think you're a little off on the news on this. She died this week. That was the news. She had been in the Senate doing all this. Then she, that may be why you have the age different, because you're reading an earlier.
I went to the picture that you posted, and that was the news on it.
Not the current news. She died at 39 of heart problems. She had been in the Senate in Uruguay, and then she actually was accused of forging some papers, but she has died this week at 39 of heart problems.
She was an activist for many years, and she helped draft the bill legalizing marriage there in 2013.
Great trailblazer and a big loss at an early age. Well, let's do the happy news from the British Antarctica territory.
Okay. We've got, where are they? Where are you guys?
Eric Bourne and Stephen Carpenter, who are stewards on a polar research ship, have the first same-sex wedding in the British Antarctic territory.
They did not get cold feet. I didn't invent that. I pulled that from a story. They tied the knot on the RRS Sir David Attenborough, Britain's new polar research ship. The point is, we are everywhere.
The point is, they're wearing kilts in the Antarctic.
Well, the sun is shining there.
Yes,
there's a lot of snow. I'm a little concerned. It seems to have melted a little bit on the top of the mountain.
Yes, well, there's that. All right. AIDS news?
Well, I also want to point out that, the United States made a deal with Russia on prisoner exchange, and Brittany Griner was not included.
Well, I'm hoping she's next. The guy, the Marine who they got released, first of all, is a Marine, and he'd been incarcerated for 2 or 3 years. So I'm hoping that this is a progression here.
She's a lesbian, and they like making examples of us over in Russia.
Well, right. I don't know. I haven't heard them publicize it a lot. Anyway, we'll see.
All right. Entertainment news.
No, AIDS news.
Oh, go ahead.
In Clarksville, Indiana, a guy had worked as a volunteer cop in the town for a year and decided to apply for a regular job in the police department. Well, he had to go through the medical exam, and they found out he was HIV positive, and they told him he could not serve as a cop. They rejected him. They had hired him, and then they told him, no, we're taking that away. This all happened in 2015. The Department of Justice, the U.S. Department of Justice, is now suing the town for discrimination and violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. We will follow that case. And interesting news from Scotland and the University of Edinburgh, where scientists have successfully harvested some viable eggs from trans men with less invasive procedures than are usual, and while they are on testosterone. Previously or currently, if a trans man wants to reproduce, he has to go off testosterone to be able to produce eggs and have them harvested. But they have found a way to go into the ovaries and harvest the material to grow viable eggs. And this is a great potential step forward for the reproductive potential of trans men without having to go off testosterone. Early stages, but great news.
I learn a lot by watching this show.
Let's move to entertainment news.
Hey, there's a new play about Billie Jean King in the works called Love All, written by Anna Devere Smith, with Elisa Solomon as the dramaturge. They're looking to have a stage reading in August. Project has Ms. King's blessing.
I'll bet.
Well, you never know.
Well, they wouldn't do that without her, I don't think. Janelle Monáe, not yet the subject of a play, but quite fascinating. She's come out before as pansexual. She has referred to herself casually as questioning her gender. She has now officially declared herself non-binary. She has been going through an evolution of self-definition.
He says, I just don't see myself as a woman solely. I feel God is so much bigger than he or she. And if I am from God, I am everything. But I will always stand with women. I will always stand up with Black women. But I just see everything that I am beyond the binary. And her pronouns are free ass mofo and they, them, her, she.
Or she, yes. And the Archie and Friends comic series has a new character, Eliza Hahn, defined as queer and biracial Asian and Black, also with a fuller figure. Now, barely, I would say.
She visits the Riverdale gang and has romantic feelings for Harper Lodge, who is also being pursued by Reggie Mantle.
I think competition for a love object is interesting. This edition of Archie and Friends will be released on June 8th if you are interested in acquiring that.
And Connor Hawke, son of Green Arrow, and the successor to Green Arrow, is coming out as asexual in DC Comics. They're doing a DC Pride 2022 issue this May 31st, 100-page anthology from LGBT creative teams throughout DC Comics.
He is a monk.
Not available in Florida.
A monk and a martial arts expert. I don't know. Do they outlaw asexual people too?
It's anything. Well, the thing is, asexual. What about heterosexual? It's insane.
It certainly is.
All right.
And we're thrilled to see a new Jeopardy winner of 16 days as we're taping. We'll see where she goes from here. Matea Roach, out lesbian, 23 years old, a tutor from Toronto, Canada.
She's won $368,981, has already paid off her student loans and then some. In addition to being a lesbian, she is a Canadian, and she has been working as a tutor in Toronto. And one of the best ways to learn, boys and girls, is to teach a subject.
She's quite charming. She's sort of offhand and casual.
Offhand, she uses her hands a lot when she. And I'm so glad she beat that annoying woman last night. If you watched the show. Anyway, it's the 8th longest streak in Jeopardy history, so she'll be facing off with Amy Schneider in the Tournament of Champions and others, of course.
Stay tuned. All right, let's launch into some theater reviews here.
All right. Well, you and I saw A Strange Loop together by Michael R. Jackson, and starring there Jaquel Spivey as a young black gay man, an usher named Usher, writing a musical during the show. And I have to say, this is the gayest show I have ever seen on Broadway. I found it to be raw and hilarious and ultimately moving. It starts out very fast-paced, great supporting cast. They personify Usher's thoughts. It's inventive and trenchant. I think it gets a little sentimental towards the end, but not before we're jarred by a sex scene and a gospel scene. And I would say if you have one show to see in New York, this might be it.
I'll let that stand. How I Learned to Drive with Mary Louise Parker and David Morse recreating their original roles from 25 years ago. This is the Pulitzer Prize winning play, I think, by Paula Vogel, the lesbian playwright. I was a little disappointed in it.
Well, it really opened up 25 years ago the discussion that we now call Me Too. But it was about something that happened even farther in the past. It shows you a time when people did not talk about this. They just buried this stuff in families and elsewhere. Well,
it's heterosexual grooming. If Florida wants to talk about grooming, they can talk about this.
Exactly. So, I'm kind of more, I wish maybe out lesbian Paula Vogel could write a play that would, more deal with what we're dealing with in our times.
Maybe she will. Maybe. Yes. But I've always wanted to see this play. I never had, and I thought it was a little too simple, slow.
Okay. They're good performances.
Now, you're the official critic. What do you?
No, I'm official critic. Well, who cares? You're as good a critic as I am. I found some of. I think the leads were good. I think some of the other stuff's a little cartoonish and things like that. But as I said, I'm looking to hear more about what's going on today.
All right. Well, we didn't find that in Hangmen either.
Well, that's about the end of capital punishment in Britain, taking place in a bar owned by the last executioner, basically, played by David Threlfall. It's another darkly funny play from Martin McDonagh. It's a very fine cast. I loved it in London a few years back. I have to say, I had even more trouble grasping the Northern English accents in this one. But it's a broad comedy, and it works.
Yeah, although I came out of it, as you know, saying, what's the point? I really,
What's it
production was
all about, Alfie? I think one of the characters was named Alfie. My favorite of the week was The Minutes by and starring Tracy Letts about a small town council meeting. Now, this is not when the meeting gets completely out of hand, by the way. It's also very dark humor. You don't see Austin Pendleton in there, but he is absolutely a standout, and he steals the show. It's very smart social commentary by Tracy Letts, who's there in the back in the purple jumper or whatever he's got on. As we struggle with teaching history, talking about our dark history, and it's a very fine play, but it does take a very dark turn.
And I made the mistake of not going to that. And if you're looking for something a little interesting and quirky, in Flint, Michigan in June, you can go to the Flint Repertory Theater, where there will be a new gay version of The Fantastics, the longest running play ever.
That's what they say. I mean, it ran in Greenwich Village forever.
42 years. And then they revived it. But the author Tom Jones is 94 years old. The idea was presented to him. He liked the idea, and he's rewritten the play with two gay men as the lead, and their families are trying to get them together. I never saw it.
It's about two dads. It's based on a Rostand play, but it's about two dads trying to get their kids to get together by denying them the opportunity. And they did it because we said no. And in this version, the two dads will be replaced by two moms.
Yes.
And they also got permission from the estate of Harvey Schmidt, who did the music. So it could be great.
There's a new movie online this weekend, Strictly for the Birds, based on the true story, a book called In Between, Strictly for the Birds, an older trans woman who finally finds love with another woman, and it's available on Amazon Prime and Google Play and iTunes and lots of other platforms.
Congratulations to Harmony, which we hailed, I guess, last week or the week before. It's up for a bunch of Outer Critics Circle awards. There it is. And then we want to draw attention. This will be in our show note. Brian Ruby, a Vassar graduate from class of 19, first pro baseball player.
First out. And
Randy Rainbow has a new memoir called Playing with Myself.
You'll see him everywhere. And we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Bye.